Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to the A24 project here on the Nerd Party Network. My name is Lee Hutchison, and Dallas King and I make our way through the A24 filmography and along the way bring you interviews with the talent involved in front of and behind the camera. Today we welcome Zachary Mooren, who plays Buster in Maxine, a Buster Keaton lookalike who stalks Maxine down a dark alleyway in Hollywood, but soon finds the tables turned on him as he draws his pocket knife. Zachary takes us behind the scenes on working on Maxine and working alongside Mia Goth and Ty West and much more in this deep dive interview. Thanks so much to Zachary for joining us, and I hope you too will enjoy this episode.
You can run and you can hide, but you'll never get away.
Drop it! Buster. What were you gonna do, huh?
Nothing. I was just playing around.
Well, we're playing now.
How did you get involved in acting, Zachary?
Wow. I mean, kind of reluctantly over the years. I felt like it was not something that was necessarily tailored for me. I was a very shy kid, but movies were kind of my life raft growing up. And there was always these school plays that were going on. And they kind of forced you to be in them when I was growing up, and I just loved it. It's one of those things that's always been kind of like a faith or a religion to me. It's never really been something that I've sought out and tried to do. It's kind of like it's a part of me, just like my left arm is.
When did you realize you could turn something like that into a career and going from just something that was a passion into something that's like a job?
I mean, I still, constantly am doubting myself in that vein, but it's such a part of who I am. It's my greatest love affair. It's what I wake up every day thinking about and go to bed thinking about every day. I still question whether or not I'm going to be able to sustain this over, a lifetime, but it's my pursuit.
Sounds like it played, as you said, such an important role in kind of your upbringing. Were there certain like films or actors that you gravitated towards that gave you that sense of comfort or perhaps inspiration?
Oh yeah, I mean, so many, but to the ones that are striking off the top of my head were my father would take my brother and I out to the movies, and he was a really big fan of Val Kilmer. So we would go see all of Val Kilmer's movies in the movie theater, and family movie nights were yeah, one night I remember him bringing home the movie Ed Wood by Tim Burton, and there was a big fight in the house between my parents because my mom thought it was inappropriate for a 5-year-old to watch. Maybe she was right, but that was another movie. And there's another memory I have of my brother's like 11 years older than me, and he was obsessed with cinema when I was growing up, and we shared a bedroom together. And he had a VHS copy of Pulp Fiction, and I grew up in a very conservative household, and any movie that was found like that, or Nirvana albums or whatever, those were smashed in front of us and thrown in the garbage. So he kept that VHS under his pillow, and every night, when my parents would go to sleep, we would look at the cover of that thing, and he showed it to me when I was a little too young, but I just remember like staring at that cover, and of Uma Thurman on the front, and John Travolta and Sam Jackson on the back, and just being like, wow, I have to make something like this one day.
You mentioned like Val Kilmer. A film I really loved in the past few years was the documentary Val about his sort of like career and the impact of his cancer. Have you had a chance to see that one?
Oh my God, yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, seeing that movie kind of redefined what being an artist is to me, and how no matter what happens to you in your life, if you're able to sort of reshape who you are and still create things, I mean, that is, again, it's going to be it's going to be your saving grace. And also that kind of changed the way when I saw him doing all of his tapes that he would send out to Martin Scorsese for Goodfellas, or he sent it to I think he did a self tape for Full Metal Jacket and sent it over to Kubrick. I think he actually hand delivered it to Kubrick, put himself on a flight and went all the way to London. I started to, when I saw that in the documentary, I said, why the fuck am I doing my self tapes like standing up against a blue backdrop, like, schmacting as much as I possibly can to get a job. And I started actually just taking agency and making my own little short films when I submit tapes now. And it was all from that.
Yeah, and there was something I think I get the impression we're both 90s kids based on the films that we grew up with. There was something about that documentary as well. And like he was such a prominent figure in the 90s and not just, your Batmans, but your prestige pictures as well. And there was like a real sense watching that of like, oh, you could feel a sense of time and so on, that someone that was a childhood hero could be impacted in such a cruel way. And I remember just feeling such a sadness watching that.
Yeah, it was terrible. I mean, it's terrible. But I met him after the fact. He did a one man show called Citizen Twain where he plays Mark Twain, and I saw that when he brought it to Los Angeles. It was like the same week when I moved to Los Angeles. I saw it actually, and then he ended up doing a taping of it and doing a screening of the film that he made of it, and that was after he got sick. And I met him after that, and again, his spirit was kind of untouched. It was, I mean, he had more energy than I've ever seen him, and more creativity and velocity than I think anybody else really.
Yeah. And how's your kind of taste evolved since that kind of 90s kid? What do you kind of find inspiration in these days in terms of the films and arts or performers as well?
I'm still after that 90s kid sort of thing where you take these incredibly colorful, larger than life ideas, and you somehow shoestring a budget together to make it that way. I think there's almost like a Roger Corman aspect of the '90s films where you have only a certain amount of dollars to make something that is going to look like a Steven Spielberg epic, and they did it. And those are still kind of the films that I gravitate towards. I mean, I think '70s, the '90s, those are the best decades for films, in my opinion.
So obviously, my first introduction to you was Maxine, but you've kind of stood out in some other roles as well. And I hadn't realized till afterwards you'd been in Cat Person, for example, that's really caught people's attention since Sundance. Can you tell us a little bit about some of your other roles that people could maybe check out?
I mean, so the ones that I would try and encourage everybody to go see are the ones that I actually helped produce. One of them is called Electric Love. It's a bit dated at the now, but back in 2018 when we made it, it was all about, people desperately trying to seek connection, but they're using, the dating apps and kind of falling flat on their face through it. And then with the same group of filmmakers that I met on that, we ended up a year and a half later kind of shotgunning another movie called Val that's a horror comedy. We worked really hard on those movies, and I'm proud of what we were able to do, for again, very low budget.
Yeah, because obviously you're not just an actor. I've noticed you've got direction work, as you mentioned, production. Do you want to be that kind of jack of all trades, auteur kind of, or is there a preference that you've maybe got? Do you want to go from actor to director, for example?
I like hopping around, but I think that, I mean, with the examples of those two movies, Electric Love and Val, I was hired onto Electric Love as the first principal actor. And there was something just within the conversations I was having with the filmmakers that they kind of ended up asking me to help cast it, to help find the soundtrack, so I kind of fell into producing these two movies with them. It wasn't something I was seeking out. And when I started moving into writing and directing, that was kind of I never expected I mean, like, Vincent Gallo is a huge influence on me growing up. John Cassavetes are huge influences on me, but I never saw myself doing that. And I think anytime that I do write, that I do direct, it's almost like this itch that I can't scratch, and I have to make it. It's not something that I really plan out or have any sort of say in. It just kind of happens.
So when did you first hear about the opportunity for Maxine? When did that come along?
Man, I was in Mexico at the time, and I just got a regular old audition. came into my Gmail, and I made a very, very bizarre tape.
Okay, what was that tape kind of like? Because you mentioned obviously you make these short films. Did you kind of decide to make a maybe a Buster Keaton style kind of
It
production?
was, I mean, I've again just I've always wanted to play Buster Keaton in a movie. I had, these daydreams of doing it for a long time, and when that opportunity came up, I was like, I'm not going to just do the scene. I'm going to make a little short movie, and I made different options of it. I used very bizarre camera techniques, and I didn't go as far as getting my testicles smashed off by the leader, but yeah, I did a fun little short film for it and tried to invoke as much Buster Keaton energy as
Yeah.
possible.
It was quite funny when I was doing my research into you. I saw someone, I think it was maybe on Reddit, that was like, "Oh yeah, he's a professional Buster Keaton impersonator," and it seemed that you must have really sold people on that.
There actually was a professional Charlie Chaplin impersonator on set. Uh, yeah, I actually even ran into him at the premiere, and he didn't break character the entire time. But no, I'm definitely not one of those Hollywood Boulevard Buster Keaton guys.
So had you kind of seen X and Pearl previously?
I hadn't. I'd seen the preview to Pearl, maybe 2 weeks before I shot the audition for this. And when I saw the preview for Pearl, I was like, this is exactly the type of cinema that like needs to be made right now. Stuff that is taking huge swings and doesn't look like, carbon copy of every movie that's come out over the past 10 years. And and I was just a huge fan of Mia Goth even before I saw the trailer for that. And then, she kind of hits you over the head with her performance even within 30 seconds of watching her in that. And so yeah, I just filmed the audition, got the movie maybe 2 weeks later, and did everything I could not to watch X or Pearl before I shot. I didn't want to be influenced by the other two movies because I also knew that tonally they're completely different. I didn't want to be intimidated, to be honest. And was pleasantly surprised after I, wrapped Maxine when I went back, started X, then went into Pearl, and yeah,
That's amazing. And what was it like when you found out that you kind of booked this kind of role?
I was pumped. I mean, I was finally like, I don't, it's difficult as an actor because you're at the grace of whoever gives you the opportunity, and a lot of times it's not necessarily what you envisioned when you were a kid getting inspired by all these things that you want to make, and so anytime that you are given an opportunity by filmmakers that are creating those things that would have inspired you when you were coming up, I mean, yeah, it doesn't get any better than that. It's nothing's more exciting than that.
So did you have much like preparation time between being cast and that and to really embrace being Buster Keaton?
I did, yeah. It was probably the most respectful process, pre-production process I've ever been a part of. They gave me the job. I think I had 6 weeks prior. I was there at the first initial cast table read. Um, I was given multiple costume try-ons at this place called Western Costume. It's historic. It's amazing. To hone the look that I wanted. Ty, the whole time it was a conversation. Makeup tests. There were certain things that I even was experimenting with the makeup team that didn't end up in the movie. I think it was a little too violent. I had like track marks made on my arms, a crazy tattoo on my back, and then I think Ty was like, the track marks are a little too violent considering what we're doing, and nobody really had tattoos like this in 1980. So, but again, like the fact that they were indulging me to sort of come up with all these things, and yeah, take the time to meet with a movement coach to sort of figure out the stillness of Buster, and yeah, I had a lot of time. I don't know how much of it ended up showing up on screen, but it was still one of those things where I feel like performances are like icebergs. What you see is just the top level, but everything else that I stand on, is underneath the surface.
Yeah. What was that kind of first day on set like? You sounded like you had a great pre-production process. What was that moment like when you could finally get on stage onto that back lot?
I mean, having that much time to sort of, ruminate about the job was lovely. And then when you actually showed up on set that day, the first day, you go, "Oh shit, we're actually gonna do this." And it was scary. That's a real gun in my mouth. real switchblade that I'm dealing with. Um, Mia and I immediately had to have a trust put in place because even if her heel was half an inch off, that would have really done some damage. And there were takes even, where I'm grabbing onto her with a real switchblade and so yeah, I mean, when we first showed up, it was very much like lighthearted conversation, trying to get to know that we can feel safe with one another. And once the costumes were on, it was very much you know, you stay over there, I'm gonna stay over here, and I'll see you between action and cut.
Because people might be surprised by that because you always think of it like, I would assume 99% of people look at that and go, fake gun, fake knife, and so on. What was perhaps like the reasoning behind using kind of real props? And like, because I can imagine even just logistically, there's so much risk assessment that goes into something like that that's not basically like rubber.
I mean, I think there's a lot of merit to it. Number one, I think the camera can always see if you're lying. And I think having a real gun in my mouth and having a real switchblade on Mia um, just brings a certain amount of authenticity to what we're doing, a certain amount of danger. I think that it makes everybody on set, not only just the actors, really locked in. And it's so easy, especially when you're an adult doing this, I feel like, to feel ridiculous, I mean, it is ridiculous what we were doing at the end of the day. Entertaining, hopefully, but ridiculous. And I think adding that little bit of danger, that little bit of realism, just kind of, I don't know, it just clicks differently.
And you obviously mentioned sort of like you were really keen to kind of work with Mia Goth. What was she like as a scene partner to work on things with?
I mean, she was very different than anybody I've ever worked with before. It was almost as if every single nuance that she came up with, she was hitting a bullseye on. Um, I had all these crazy ideas. I was just the fact that the character comes, you first meet him and he's antagonizing her the way he does, and I had an idea about, well, when Buster Keaton did switch over to talkies and you heard his voice, he had a very deep, very, weird monotone voice. And once that sort of character gets broken by the fact that he gets a gun thrown on him, I wanted to figure out who was underneath that. And Ty was very much so, he's a scared little, the opposite of how he approached it. And so with that, I was like, oh, I have all these big ideas that I can sort of throw. And when I started take one with her and just locked in on her, I was genuinely afraid of that person that she clicked into. And all of those ideas, that sort of things that you wanted to try, went completely out the window, and you were just locked in on your scene partner, which is the way it should be. I mean, if you're planning things out X, Y, and Z to do in a scene, then the scene's going to suck. It's all about the electricity that happens once you plug into your scene partner and, between action and cut. And again, like I said, she was precise on what she was doing on this one. And then going back and watching each of the movies, her performance in them are completely different. And they're completely different because of what the requirements of that movie were from her. This one is a this one's a dirty Harry popcorn summer movie, and her performance, I think, is meticulous to that, as opposed to a Pearl, which is theatrical, over the top, and X, which is very just sort of grungy, sexy. I don't.
And I love that scene in particular because I found what was quite interesting with the film was that I expected her to be have more perhaps agency within the film, and there was times where I thought the kind of character seemed quite passive, but the scene with yourselves, there's a real intensity to that you feel like, oh my God, like she could like tear this guy up. We know she can kill people, and she's up against another killer as well. And I found that scene really sparked in quite a unique way in the film.
I'm happy to hear that. But even at the table read, when we first all sat down with the script, she even told me, she came straight up to me and was like, "This is a great, great freaking scene. I can't wait to put this in the movie." And then when you read the whole script, it was probably 200 pages, and the movie got edited down to, I don't even know, 100 and whatever. But like, this was a way more epic fairy tale of a movie the way it was written. And I think the lack of her agency in the cut of the movie was because there are certain characters that were basically prophesizing things to her throughout the movie that didn't end up in the cut. And that scene in particular is a perfect example. Like, even my character had more more footage of him prior to when you meet him. And I think that her reaction to that was very much so because of some of the things that were edited out of that movie. Um, and at the same time, that's like actually a huge testament to the filmmaker that Ty is, in my opinion. Somebody that can write something, direct something, edit it, and realize that each stage is its own thing, and to allow the movie to talk to you in each of those stages. I know so many filmmakers that, the screenplay is the Bible, they shoot it that way, and then they force that same sort of spark that is in the screenplay in the edit, and it doesn't work that way. Movies are very much an assembly line, and you have to take what's given to you in each stage of the process.
I'm curious, when you saw that script originally, like based on your upbringing, that conservative family, film burning essentially, did you sort of recognize a little bit of kind of you in kind of this character of Maxine, someone with quite a religious sort of family, or maybe more, I should say, more conservative family than and so on? Was there a bit of real?
Well, I mean, yeah, no, no, no. I mean, I was very much raised in a crazy, crazy, kooky Catholic house. I mean, it was, yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that I definitely resonated with some of that, and yeah, let's just say my mother's not gonna watch this movie.
Yeah. And it's interesting now knowing even think like it's a real gun. Like it was a really vulnerable role you took on. There's the nudity, there's essentially giving a blowjob to a gun. Did you have like any concerns, or are you someone that's got that like that 90s buzz of like I'll take anything on, this is real kind of art here.
That's that very much so that. I mean, I again, like what I was saying, I don't have any control about unless I make the project. I don't have control about what I take on, what shapes I sort of take on as an actor, and if something scares the shit out of you, and it's in a project with people that you really respect, I'll do anything. I mean, I think that kind of proves it. And I also, the character isn't in a lot of screen time, but the amount of people that have wanted to engage and talk about it has definitely made me feel like it was worth it. You know what I mean?
So what about that prosthetic? That's something that stood out for a lot of people. What can you tell us about that?
What prosthetic?
Oh, very true. Hope you're on the road to recovery.
um, Yeah, I mean, there was no prosthetic the days that we were shooting principal photography, and then I had to come back for inserts of that on a separate day after the movie wrapped, and that was kind of fun because shooting was intense, and then when we were able to come onto a sound stage and do that specific part of it, we were all able to laugh again and realize like how ridiculous it is of what we were making, and just be like, oh, I hope people dig it, I hope we're not going too far. But again, it was one of those things where you're like, I've never seen anything remotely like that in a movie, and I'm so happy, proud, and glad that I got to offer that to the cinema gods.
There's a comedian you might be familiar with that we've got here in Scotland called Limmy, and he's got like a great kind of line that's become very memed of like, don't back down, double down. And it's one of those ones when you watch that, it's not just someone gets stamped, oh, it gets really kind of stamped and obliterated. You sell it with the scream as well. That's one that's like not just going in, it's just going all in and a couple of times over.
I did that scream in one take.
And what do you tap into to produce a scream like that?
I think that it was because it was on the tail end of filming with Mia and how intense that was. Again, like I think for keeping it an R rating, we had to trim down a lot of the stuff that her and I were doing with each other. Because yeah, I mean, there's no way that they could have kept some of that in, especially with what she was doing to me. It was very, yeah. But I think that was an immediate result, take one of the kind of intensity that was happening between the two of us.
What maybe didn't make the kind of cut that I suppose you were subjected to?
It was way more hypersexualized, and there were takes that were extremely violent on my end towards her. Um, yeah, I mean, and the sort of, you know, she luxuriated in the process a little bit more, and a little bit more sexualized.
Kind of thinking of like that. Remember that film Killer Joe, where there's like,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
I kind of always imagine that where there's like there's the humiliation aspect, but there's someone also getting off to kind of thing. I've got that kind of image in my head.
It was absolutely like that. Yeah, that's a really good. That was actually the first time I ever read the script. The sides even that was the first thing I thought of was Killer Joe.
So what was Ty West like as a director to work with? What does he kind of run his sets like?
He again was completely, even his producers that he works with on everything, completely inclusive and supportive of my process and including me. And that was there's a lot of names on that bill, and there was never a tier system. It felt like you were just as important as anybody else, and what your process was just as important as anybody else. I will say that the days that we were shooting this movie, you look at it and think that, oh, this is a huge budget film. You have all the time in the world to do things, but like that is not the case at all. And it was under time constraints. It was very hectic. He was um, he was very much so captain of the ship, and relied on his relied on his team to sort of keep everything moving so that he could stay in the zone of what he exact needed. And and then yeah, I mean, like I said, like it was hectic when we were shooting and very intense. And then, the day that I came in to do the pickups with the prosthetic, and then, able to get to know him a little bit better. And then the premiere at the Chinese theater, got to hang out and party with him and his wife and his baby, and you got to know him a little bit different. But he's somebody that I think is hitting this stride of of his work where there's no boundaries anymore. I think he's really just hitting a stride where his films are going to be very exciting coming forward. And I can't wait to see what he does after this, to be honest.
So was the Chinese theater the first time you got to see the film altogether?
That was the first time I saw the film. That was the first time I ever dared go to the Chinese
Yeah.
theater.
What was that like to
Um,
go there? Because that's like one of those like real moments for some actors, like to have a film play at the place where they've done Star Wars, all these other things where you just see those iconic pictures. And the premiere looked like a lot of fun from the outside with the fake protest and so on as
oh
well.
yeah, that was nuts. I mean, it was a dream come true, and I still feel like I'm a bit uh, dazed and confused by it. Yeah, it was just a surreal. It was surreal. It just felt like it wasn't really happening, and um, right after, you do the red carpet thing and you do some interviews, I walked around this corner, and um, there's this actor that I've run into a few times. We have a similar reps, but his name's Scoot McNairy, and I'm a
Oh
huge fan of
yeah,
his.
great guy.
He runs right up, gives me a hug, and starts talking to me about, the movie and yada yada. And again, he's just kind of a big hero of mine. And immediately after that, I'm talking to Kevin Bacon, and who had seen the movie, and he's talking to me. It was surreal. It was like all these heroes of yours that you put on a pedestal for so long, and you think that they're different from you, and then all of a sudden they're movie fans just like you, just trying to make things that other people are entertained by, and do the same things for them that movies did for you when you were growing up. It's very much it's a communal thing. It was awesome, man.
Yeah. Did you have any kind of nerves before your kind of scene was coming up, and how much made the cut or didn't make the cut, or if you even managed to be in it at all, kind of thing? We were,
I mean, yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, my head was in my lap. I don't even think I watched the movie. I was yeah. Um, it's not easy to watch yourself um ever, but under these circumstances, it was particularly difficult. But hearing the crowd when it happened, and seeing, I don't know how many seats are in that theater, but seeing the reaction from the audience was, I mean, it was amazing.
And you can imagine there's like, you always think of like a big American audience, like you can imagine them screaming and making noise at sort of your scene. Then you get like a UK audience that's a bit more quiet. But I remember just watching that scene, and I'm just like moving a little bit in my chair, kind of glancing at my partner next to me, of like, oh my God, they're really doing this. Oh, and it's so interesting to imagine different responses to such a scene.
Yeah, yeah, it is funny. My sister-in-law, she lives in Berlin, and she was telling me the reaction that that her audience had when that happened. She was like, it was the biggest part of the movie. Like, it's just funny to hear what different places around the world and how they react to it. And um, what I will say about this movie in particular too is hearing from a lot of people that don't, they're not like film nerds like you and I. You know what I mean? They're just they like it as a source of entertainment, but they don't think too much about it. And hearing their reaction to this movie, I feel like it really broadens audiences together in a way. You don't need to be a cinephile to like this one.
Yeah, it's interesting how these films have broken out because it like, I remember going to see X, not long post COVID, cinemas are starting to come back, and then, each film's quite different. And then, this whole cult that's around it, people have got tattoos of Pearl. She's this instantly quotable thing, and it's one of these like rare things that is organically kind of growing. It's not like it's the Marvel films or things where they come with all these things built in. This has been kind of like an organic growth and something that's quite unique, which I think is to be always to be celebrated.
Isn't that exciting though, that people are starting to there's a phenomenon about something that is this unique. I mean, I had no idea about the sort of culture surrounding the movie until after I shot and people started, reaching out through Instagram or whatever and started to realize like, oh, this actually has a big fan base and that to me is very encouraging as an actor, as a filmmaker, knowing that audiences want good material. They want new things to get excited about. They really are tired of the same formula, regardless of what the box office says. I mean, these movies were made shoestring basically budgets um, during COVID lockdown. I mean, they're unhinged how they're made, and I think it just reflects that audiences are really they're dire for original material.
And it goes back to that thing that, I'm sure you say as much to me. Films like Maxine used to be 10 a penny in the 90s. You would have Maxine one week and then probably something that's equally as original the following week and so on. Whereas it kind of stands out a little bit, these kind of films of like, oh, we've got this is something a bit new, we better go along and see it, they, become popular. But in the 90s, there was always films like this to go along and see and to be found on video and VHS. And it's a shame that films like this, in terms of the originality and the appeal, are just a bit too rare, I think.
Yeah, I think A24 is definitely leading the front on making sure that that's eradicated, that's not what's going to happen in the future. I think we're seeing a really big shift in movies right now. Um, again, regardless of box office, I think that people are talking about good films again. And I mean, I don't know how many superhero Marvel whatevers came out this year, but probably a lot. And I don't know, they're not really being talked about in
No,
my circles.
it's a bit sad in terms of the UK. Like, what Deadpool Wolverine just came out today, and like one of the counter programming films is that I saw the TV Glow, which has obviously got great write up in America, but like here in Edinburgh, the capital city, one showing a day at one cinema and so on, and like you can go see in 4DX, Screen X, multiple times a day, Deadpool Wolverine. But people that are looking for an original film have to go along at either 8 o'clock at night or 3 in the afternoon during the working day to see something that's really unique and has come with a lot of buzz to the UK, which is just frustrating.
I mean, I think it's just even more of a calling for people with a few dollars to open up independent cinemas again. And you don't need these huge multiplexes. You just need a couple of chairs, a screen, and start showing them,
So what's coming next for yourself, Zachary?
Um, well, some stuff that I really hope pans through. I'm in negotiation right now with another A24 movie, and I can't really talk about it.
Sounds good. Well, it just
But
sounds like a good excuse to get you back on again in the future, all going well.
yeah, man, I would love that. Again, like this movie in particular, the filmmaker in particular, and everything about it, I really hope it all works out. if that doesn't happen, I still have a film of my own that I'm going into production on mid-August, and it's called Capricorn. And yeah, I kind of just like I was saying, aside from what people sort of cast you in, I just always kind of find it important to make sure you're doing your own thing and having your own voice, just because it also gives you agency on what you say no to. You don't have to do every cop TV show where you tell the good guys which way the bad guys go, or vice versa. You might not be keeping the lights on or putting food on the table, but there's certain things that are a little bit more important to me than just making a paycheck from. You
Absolutely. And you obviously mentioned A24. Any kind of favorite films of theirs from their filmography that you like that stand out for you?
There's one that I can't get out of my head. I've seen it maybe 5 times in the past 2 years. Is After Sun.
Brilliant film. Like, it's one of my favorite films.
First time I ever saw that was actually on the plane to Mexico when I shot this audition for Maxine, and I was watching it on my iPhone, and it hypnotized me even on a screen that size. Um, I just think it's one of the most impactful, beautiful movies I've ever seen, and I can't wait to see what that filmmaker does
Yeah,
next. You know,
she's, talking of independent cinemas, like, um, After Sun got its premiere and well, UK premiere like at the Edinburgh Film Festival a couple of years ago, and we did like the opening night like red carpet event and so on, which was just amazing to interview
is
Paul.
she Scottish?
She's Scottish, yeah. And what she's done is like one of our really great independent cinemas here in Edinburgh closed a couple of years ago. It went bust for a couple of different reasons, and it's just coming back. Early next year, people have really got behind it in a big campaign, and it was announced that Charlotte Wells, the director of Aftersun, is going to be one of the patrons of that kind of cinema. When it kind of reopens, which is just fantastic. And she's been someone that at the opening night of like After Sun and other events have talked about how you need those independent cinemas. You need to build them because there's no point in making an After Sun or a Maxine if you don't have the kind of cinemas that people will go along and see these films and champion them and so on. And she's someone that's certainly not forgotten her Scottish roots and the type of cinemas that where she would go along, get her film education and so on, which is just fantastic. And After Sun is just beautiful, like the performances and that ending has just stuck with me for years now.
And just like what masterful work on from everyone, from actors to what she did, and yeah, I mean, it's truly incredible. I'm glad that you guys are revitalizing that theater. So important.
And finally, where can people keep up to date with like any news or developments on your career or films that you've got coming out?
I mean, there's IMDb, there's Instagram, although I'm not really not posting selfies every day. But when I do have projects coming out, I usually post about them, or yeah, IMDb, or I kind of want to be one of those people that, you know, surprises you every time you go to the movies. You don't really know where they're going to pop up or what they're going to do next, but then there they are.
That's the type of actors we're always looking out for on this podcast, and it looks like hopefully we'll have another opportunity to keep an eye out for you in the future.